The Life and Accomplishments of Noam Chomsky. Noam Chomsky was born on December 7, 1928 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, to parents William and Louise Chomsky, who came from Russia to the United States. He was the oldest of two, his younger brother being Dr. David Eli Chomsky, who was born in 1934, but unfortunately passed away in 2001. He attended Oak Lane Country Day School and Central High School. He graduated at the age of 16 from high school and then enrolled at the University of Pennsylvania. He enrolled in 1945, where he explored the topics of philosophy and picked up the language Arabic. He paid his way through college by teaching Hebrew. He actually almost dropped out of college until he met linguist Zelling Harris. They met in a political circle, talked a lot about theoretical linguistics. This inspired him to continue his studies in linguistics. During college, he married his childhood friend, Carol Doris Schatz, in 1949. And during college, he became a fellow at Harvard, where he wrote a draft on his theories that was about 1,000 pages long. The University of Pennsylvania only read the first page of it before approving him of his PhD. He got his bachelor's in 1951 and his PhD in 1955, both in linguistics. He obtained a job at MIT as a part-time assistant professor. He was promoted to a full-time associate professor in 1957, where he had to teach an undergraduate and graduate class. He enjoyed his undergraduate class more because he had more freedom to teach what he wanted, so he taught his students his ideas on language and grammar. Because of this, he noticed things that he didn't see before. His lectures were later published under the name Syntactic Structures in 1957. He also had his first child in 1957. He became a National Science Foundation Fellow at Princeton in 1958. As academically successful as he was, he actually pushed back his academic research to become a political activist. He made his wife finish her degree in case he got arrested during his political activism, since it was aimed towards the U.S. government. And luckily, they did this because he was arrested in 1972 due to an anti-war march towards the Pentagon. He retired from MIT in 2002, but however, he never finished his researching. He was known as one of the most cited scholars in modern history. A reason for being called this is due to his influence on a variety of fields. This can include grammar, cognitive studies, philosophy, psychology, computer science, mathematics, childhood education, and anthropology. He said there was a way to look at linguistics universally. He noticed that there was a general principle that all languages could use. Thus, by this reasoning, he created his generative grammar theory, which is theorized that not only linguistic structure, but also human mental processes, namely the structure of a man's inherently acquired reason, could be understood. Another major work was his book, Syntactic Structures, which has 7 parts, and Aspects of Theory of Syntax, which has 2. So part 1 of the Syntactic Structures book was the basis of syntactic investigation. Within this first part, Chomsky begins to explain the syntax for language and the goals for what he hopes to get from syntactic study. He believes that it is a linguistics goal to create the grammar used for a language. Part 2 is grammatical matter of the language. In this part is where his famous sentence, "Colorless green ideas sleep furiously," came from. The reason this sentence is well known is because he used this as an example of a sentence that is grammatically correct, but has no meaning whatsoever. This is a major argument for him for his use of independent syntax. The third part discusses devices for grammar and transformation. In this section, he discusses 3 parts in his transformational grammar. These parts include phrase structure rules, transformation rules, the morphophonetic rules. Part 4 and Part 5 of this book discuss the justifications and applications of grammar. Part 6 of this book looks at certain levels of linguistic analysis. He discusses here that the linguistic theory is not able to exist just by creating grammatically acceptable sentences, and that other levels of the structural phenomena must come into play when speaking of this theory. Part 7, and the final part of this book, discusses that up to this point, his analysis in this book is formally based and does not have semantics. He reminds us that using meaning to confirm a grammatical description is not ideal and almost useless in a sense. He discusses that using this type of formal, non-semantic type of work on a syntactic theory may be the only way to help out the independent semantic theory of his. In the Aspects of Theory of Syntax book, Part 1 discusses how in linguistic theory, a person with the ideal speaker-listener trait is someone who is skilled in the knowledge of conditions that are not relevant grammatically and focus on actually performing their language. Part 2 moves on to grammar and states for a grammatically acceptable sentence, Chomsky believes that a sentence must be natural, comprehensible, and not out of topic. Many researchers base their research improving his work or expanding it. New support found in Chomsky's theory regarding in the internal grammar that humans have that to help us understand a phrase even though it is a phrase that is nonsensical. They did this by testing it with multiple experiments that included MEG and ECOG. Before this research, however, many neuroscientists and psychologists actually rejected his point of view on this matter. They did not believe that there was an internal grammar, but rather it was more of a statistical approach where calculations were made between words and sounds to create a structured sentence. Another form of criticism was in the form of debate between B.F. Skinner and Noam Chomsky. The biggest battle between these scientists is how they believe language is formed. Skinner discusses that language is learned in children by learning from the environment around them. On the other hand, Chomsky discussed the theory of universal grammar that all humans possess, which helps the children learn language by a more biological sense instead of a social sense. Chomsky, now at age 95, lives his retired life with his current wife, Valeria Wasserman. So Chomsky and Carol were together until Carol's passing in 2008. He married Valeria in 2014 and currently is still married and lives on his life with her.